In this video, I just wanted to share a little prototype that I'm working on at the moment, inspired by one of these photogrammetry rigs where you have lots of cameras in a sphere and each of those cameras is taking a picture. In this case, it's being used to photograph a model from which the photogrammetry will create a 3D mesh. But I wanted to take that same principle and think about how that might be applied to a product or a product shot where you might need to create lots of assets for social media, or an architectural model or a building that you might want to create lots of assets, but you don't necessarily have to set up lots of cameras. So I'll run through what this does and then I'll break down how that's put together. So let's just run it first of all. So I've created a HUD that gives me a little preview so I can see what's going on and get a sort of progress. It tells me what the file name is underneath. So we'll just let that run. So this is just a sort of crude demonstration, but this might be a kind of combination of three-dimensional objects that are creating a nice composition. In front of the camera is a 3D widget which has the just do something type as a transparent widget. So that's actually moving around with the camera, but to all intents and purposes it feels like it's aligned to the same spot. So if we come back out to our Windows Explorer and I look in saved from the project folder, so there's a project folder saved, I set up a subfolder called demo1, and then in here we have all of those PNGs. So let's look at those a bit bigger. So they're all square, they would all be perfect for Instagram, for example. So just very quickly, you've got a whole suite of images. These are from an earlier export. Let me get rid of those. But now I've got that set up in the project, I can play around with some of the other settings. So let's have a look at our post-process. So we might take the saturation out. So no, I want some really nice gritty black and white ones. I want a vignette on the camera. I want it to be much sort of grittier, possibly higher contrast. We can come and have a look at our render target and see what that's looking like. I'm actually going to turn on particle system. There's a particle system in there as well, which should be part of that now. Undock this, it will give us a real-time update when we go back. So suddenly that's a bit manic, but just to sort of illustrate the point that very quickly you can create different versions of the same thing, swap out the mesh if you've got a collection of shoes, but want to create a kind of unique and consistent look, really. Let's see what we've got here. We've got we'll turn on a sort of background grey. So let's have a look. A separate folder, demo, black and white, some different angles. So I'll say -3.3 will be a bit better. So you can play around with all sorts of different settings, different objects, different mesh, but very quickly I've got a whole variety of things going on. So that's one example. So there we are, they're just starting to update on the preview. But between two sets, very quickly, we've got a lot of variation. In this example, I wanted to show an architectural site. And this is Mies van der Rohe's Farnsworthy House, and this model and project put together by FabriceBurelli.com from his Master Unreal series. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes. I brought in my camera actor, and on this occasion we're exporting 16:9 images. So same thing, a preview on the HUD, with the file name being written underneath for my reference. So coming to our Mies House project folder, looking in saved, and I'd set up a subfolder called Insta. And there we are, we've got all of those images output. That's a demonstration of what the camera rig can do. In the next lesson, we will look at how to set that up in Blueprint. So with the second version, I have brought in a CineCamera component rather than a Scenecapture2D that renders to the render target. I have got a lot more control. We have got some additional functionality exposed. So for example, the aperture, so we can kind of focus in and out on the mesh. I've still got the camera distance from the object. And rather than the widget, I've now replaced that with a plane with a square texture because it actually renders better. The edges are much cleaner, and it also gives us the ability to play around with the emissive value. So, you know, if I wanted a nice pink, but I wanted to make it sort of bright pink, I can now do that as well. And I've still got the particle system in there. And then when we press play, the Cine camera is nominated as the main camera because I've set that actor up as a pawn. So the game possesses that pawn. That camera is accessed, and then through a console command we are doing high-res screen grabs that then get saved into the screen grabs folder. So let's demo that. And I've got a wide monitor, so hopefully it will display properly. So there we are. The same action as before. I can nominate the degrees in rotation and in roll. And because the texture is locked to the position of the camera, that is in a consistent place. But now obviously we've also got the particle system that is randomizing some graphic interest. And we've still got our bailout angle. So then when we go to our project folder, and because these are screen grabs, rather than nominating a folder path, which we did with the scene capture version, which was exporting the files, these screenshots come into the saved folder, but into a screenshots folder, and there they are. And I set the console command to HighScreenShot 2, so it doubles up. So there we are, that's 3840 pixels by 2160. Again, you can create lots of assets very, very quickly.